And we are live with Carl Hagander, almost like the ice cream Hagen does. Me and Carl have enjoyed a nice convo since the last 7 minutes. Lots of overlap there. Carl is live from Sweden, I believe, right, Carl?
That's
Europe.
right. I'm calling in from rural Sweden, right in the middle of nowhere.
Nice. Let's hope the connection holds, but I should do competition with my Mexican connection. Yeah, really nice. And I'm excited to speak to Carl for the sales overlap we have. We're going to speak about content today, which, yes, scales very much. Carl and I also have experience in cold email. When you combine cold email plus content, exactly like I did for this podcast, you get amazing results, right? Because you get guests to accept your invite. On the pod, these guests can refer you other guests. It's pretty exponential. You can create a bunch of content also from that YouTube video, make YouTube shorts. By the way, that's what I teach you in my new course from podbuyer.com, how to start, scale a podcast. Shout out to this amazing company of mine. Carl, welcome to the pod. Really glad to have you on. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about ReSocialize.
Thanks, Charles. I'm super excited to be here, and I really look forward to this conversation. Love the short talk we had before this. I'm Carl Hagander. I'm a co-founder of ReSocialize, and basically, I'm an old school gamer. And growing up, I played lots of computer games, and I built really deep relationships with people online. And eventually, I grew up. I cut my hair, got a job, started working in tech sales, and the pandemic hit. And during the pandemic, there were so many people who were isolated and in their homes. People started working from home, were forced to do that. And as an old school gamer who's built lots of deep relationships online, I couldn't understand why people weren't doing this better, why companies weren't doing this better. And that was sort of the spark that became ReSocialize. And ReSocialize, it's a business metaverse. It's an online room for companies. It's an online office or an event room or whatever it is companies need to get those connections between people, regardless of how people are working remotely. That's why I'm in the middle of nowhere in rural Sweden, and I'm able to have this conversation with you, Charles, from Mexico. It's amazing.
Right. Let's start with the gaming background. So we also shared that. So it's funny, right? When you see the alignment between individuals, well, also most probably almost the same age. Me, I first was the number one torrent hunter on the World of Warcraft on my server, and I was the number one PvP player. Actually, there was only one guy that used to beat me in duels, and he was that Frost Mage, and he would pop his ice cube while I would enrage myself and wait for my cooldowns and shit. And people that played World of Warcraft will know. But yeah, that was my start. Then I became quite very good at Call of Duty. Had a ratio of 2.5. So also like people that play, that means that for every death that I had, I killed 2.5 humans, which is very good. Most people have shitty ratios of 0.96. So that being said, gaming, it kind of forged my brain and gamified my whole view of this world, right? Even nowadays in business, it's like if I'm playing World of Warcraft, I'm having all my experiments and some of them work. It provides serotonin to my brain. I double down on them. It's really much real time. Every action that I take, I try to have almost an immediate serotonin loop. It's good and bad, right? Like I look at my LinkedIn notifications, 50 likes there, 60 likes there, trying not to get too hooked. But I'm also for the theory of gamifying business and closing these serotonin loops, meaning to get completely addicted to your business, so much so that you lose track of time, you forget eating. What do you think about that theory?
I recognize that a lot. I've been there several times, but it's funny you bring up World of Warcraft. This is not something we talked about before, but I actually just started playing it yesterday on a private server, together with my wife and CEO. And some more people. But playing World of Warcraft, do you recognize the feeling of stepping into one of these big rooms for the first time, and you see it's full of players, it's full of other people. Somebody just completed, oh, you got a world first on the new raid that just launched, and people are celebrating and just going crazy about what's going on. That's the kind of feeling that we want to take to business. Why World of Warcraft is such an old game. Why isn't remote work like that? That's the core question. And I love that you bring up the serotonin loop and gamification. In a professional setting, gamification is so often only scoreboards and top lists and people fighting for that top position. Whereas in a game like World of Warcraft, like so many other games, they've engineered so many aspects of it to get people to want to keep going, to want to keep grinding, and so much more than just a top list, just a scoreboard. Why are these concepts of gamification so far behind in the professional world? And that's a personal interest of mine. ReSocialize is built to address one of those two, but I'm so curious about how you can use these metrics and serotonin hacks to get people and build productivity and get people to want to be excited of taking that next step, doing that next task, moving forward.
It's a very interesting question, because World of Warcraft, okay, and by the way, like my advice to you would be like, close that shit, close your account right now. Because I mean, okay, where does that come from? It's not necessarily good feedback for what I'm about to say, because your brain is mature right now. But why did I get so hooked and so good at World of Warcraft? And good is like a synonym with hooked, right? The more time and energy you spend into anything, the better you're gonna be. World of Warcraft was a full-time job for me. It was almost like before my studies and shit back in these days. It actually contributed to me starting to perform very poorly at school. I invested 40 plus hours into this, and my brain was young. It wasn't like fully solidified plastic. And even up to this day, my brain is still not fully hard plastic. It's still somewhat soft, and there's a lot of neuroplasticity happening left and right. But back in these days, I was susceptible, right? I was a teenager, so I was going through some shit, like all teenagers. I didn't know exactly where to go, where I would fit socially. I wasn't the little superstar I was when I was at primary school, so I turned to video games. So I was somewhat vulnerable. And then I found a solace. I found a place in which I could constantly level up on a daily basis. The serotonin loop was immediate. If you work, Charles, you level up. And school wasn't that fucking way, School was like, oh, you're third grade of high school. Shit, I have 10 fucking more years before I can actually make $1. While in this video game, I could make 50 pieces of gold on a daily basis. I could buy and sell. So I learned some skills from that experience. It was positive. I learned cooperation. I learned business. I learned how to speak English. I learned, how to trash talk with people, which is also funny. But I got hooked to it, and it wasn't. Maybe it saved me in that part of my life, but it was mostly not good. And I wish that I would have spent that time doing more entrepreneurial stuff. But obviously that adverse thinking is not valid. I can't go back in time. And I think it had some benefits with me. But that leads me to the next question. I recently gave up video games. I was playing Rocket League, which is so frigging fun, on my Switch. I sold my Switch. And I was like, no more time for that. And I'm converting all of that serotonin loops into business. What do you think about that decision? Because I think that first, it's taking my time, it's taking my energy, and it's also converting my brain into get the pleasure quick, which I don't want. I want my serotonin loops to be there in business, but I also want long serotonin loops teaching me that I need to go the very long distance before I get rewarded. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's a great decision, because like you're saying, these games are engineered to hack people's brains and minds and to get them to keep going. And that's basically the mechanics are very similar to those of addiction. And there are other things at play here. And for those who haven't played World of Warcraft, it's a huge, massive multiplayer online game. And you've got groups of up to 40 people cooperating and doing very precise tasks to be able to achieve the impossible and beat impossible enemies. And the communication skills and collaboration skills and planning skills that grow in these settings with sometimes complete strangers, that's amazing. But there's also a downside of it. I did something similar a couple of years ago. I got my first child. She's 3 years old now. And as soon as I got a child, there's no more time between being doing work, being a father, eventually becoming a founder of a company, I'm channeling all of that energy into other things. But then again, it's also, there's also the social aspect of it. My wife, same situation. We're still together. We're obviously together. She's the CEO of ReSocialize. We spend a lot of work and family time and leisure time together. And for us to be able to play games together, it's a way to sort of cool off and relax. And bearbeta is the word in Swedish. I lost it in English, but sort of process all of the things that the thoughts we've had during the day, both with our child, but also with ReSocialize together. And like you're saying, a child's mind is much more plastic or impressionable than an adult's mind. And I want my child to get pleasure from these long serotonin loops as opposed to the small ones. That's more constructive in the long aspect. And that's, as I'm sure any parent on here will recognize, not always the easiest process. But yeah, being a good role model and making sure that we're building for the long term, no matter what it is we're building, if it's a family unit or a company, that's the foundation for a healthy life.
I think that like sooner or later we're gonna live in this AR world, in this enhanced version of reality. I don't think we can avoid that. This is like, I don't see us, I don't see that future not happening. It's just like AI, you know, you can try to fight it, but it will be there sooner or later. Why? My thesis is that this reality right now, I'm enhancing this reality with you right now. I use this microphone that enhances my voice. I use Zoom that enhances my image. I use coffee that enhances my brain and my vocabulary. We already lived in an enhanced reality. So whether, yeah, cheers, whether it's through glasses, whether it's AR, VR, is going to be there. So my question for you is, I'm going to have children pretty soon too of my own. When should I start putting a screen in front of their faces, if so?
So before, I love that question. I really want to answer it. But before going into that, there's one thing that you said that I'd like to just unpack and address a little bit. I don't think that we're heading towards a future with where all interaction will be VR or AR. And that is coming from a founder who's created a metaverse for this kind of communication. We humans, we're social beings. We need that social connection. We need people around us. No amount of tech will change that, at least not within a reasonable time span. Sure, if you look at tens or hundreds of thousands of years, whatever, but that doesn't make sense. We need that human connection. And as soon as we try to replace human connection with technological connection, then we're going in the wrong direction. I think that was the core thing that Meta did wrong with their metaverse. And the difference between what we're doing now is it wouldn't be feasible for me in rural Sweden, for you in Mexico, to get together and have this talk in person, but rather we're extending and we're enhancing our personal experience. And that's a slightly different thing, but that's also at the core of what we're trying to do with ReSocialize. And that's an important distinction. At least I find it is.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, Meta's vision, for sure, it was kind of hampered by, I think, their lack of product execution or the right vision. But yeah, like you said, I think we're going to get there sooner or later, whether it is 10 to 12K years. On the short term, though, I fully agree. But I will somewhat challenge you on that point, saying that I'm using this app. It's called Hey Pi. It's like Coach GPT, right? So I can tell it about my day, my feelings, and right now it's not super advanced, but it is better than most humans at listening to me. And it somewhat feels that way. I also think that biochemically we can remove that need, oxytocin. But yeah, short term, we need to have that socialization. And the world that I picture precisely is a little lens on my eye, you know, and it would just enhance this world and show me my wife's heartbeat right now, her cortisol level, and what she's on right now, you know, like, or whatever cool thing I can get. And oh, give me a topic of conversation, tell her about this, how is she feeling? Is she still feeling pain in her knee, for example, and be more empathetic. So first, what do you think about that? And second, the screen question with the children's. I need that one answered because I'm still conflicted on that one.
First of all, that sounds very cool what you're describing, but it's also not necessarily something that I'm excited about. I like myself and my wife and everybody, all my friends, everybody who's close to me, with warts and all. We all have our imperfections. We're all bad. We all have bad days, and sometimes we say things in a way that they get interpreted not as we intended, and that's fine. That's a part of being human. Regarding your screen question, I think that learning to code and getting good at accessing and navigating screens is a core skill for anybody going forward. That's something that everybody will benefit from. But then again, using screens as a chance to sort of shut out reality or shut away reality, that's something that I'm trying to avoid as much as possible. So I'm trying to teach my child, she's just 3, about the logic behind decision making and the logic behind coding, and use screens as a creative outlet or output together, without saying, oh, you're a bit loud right now, here's a screen, use that to pacify yourself. And I think that's an important distinction to make. And the first one, using screens to activate, I think you can start pretty early, but using screens to pacify, that's something that I don't want to do to myself either. That ties into the gaming conversation we had earlier. That's the same sort of, there's no time where that is good.
Respect your
Did
opinion
that answer
there.
your question, Charles?
Yeah, that's added value right there. Second question I have is, how do you work with your wife? Like, how do you make that possible? I think I can learn a lot from you there too.
So this is not our first venture together. I used to run a food truck back in the day. I spent my first professional decade in the restaurant industry and hospitality industry, and I ran a food truck. Took it from one truck to 7 locations, 5 brick and mortar restaurants. It was a pretty cool journey, and I had my wife join me for that. And we worked together, and it was only possible because we
in
were
the
two,
truck, the two of you in the truck every day.
Yeah. I had a core team of people, and whenever we got a call saying, hey, can you come out tonight? I could say yes, because I knew that if none of my core team of staff could make it, I could always go out there and bring my wife and we'd run it ourselves. So I could always say yes, because our lives were that intertwined. And that also gave me the chance to, when I called my staff, say, hey, chef, we got this call. Are you able to work in 2 hours? It's okay to say no. If you say no, I'll solve that some other way, but I want you to have a first chance to this. And they could say yes, or they could say no. So we had a very good professional relationship with everybody working, because of the safety that I had, knowing I could always work with my wife. I could always have that as a fallback position. So working with my wife, from that experience, we know we work well together. And for anybody who's worked in a kitchen, that's a hectic, stressful environment. Things need to go fast. It's tight. There's not a lot of room. There's not room for error. If we can work in that environment together, then we can work in other environments together as well. And instead, rather than working with somebody who I need to differentiate between family and personal and professional, this is working with somebody who knows all of my flaws, all of my imperfections, knows how to handle them, and also has complete trust in me that we're doing things for the right reason. We're doing things with good intentions. We want to achieve the best outcome, both for ourselves and for the other, and we're in for the long game. And those are huge strengths. I can trust her completely. I know exactly how she'll react and what her thoughts are going forward, because we talk about this every day. We're thinking about this every day, and we can bring things up. We can pitch ideas without them being fully formed, and sort of co-create those to make sure we're making the right decisions. So I see that as a huge strength, because I know we work well together in stressful environments.
And she has the CEO role. What's her role in the mix?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
She has the CEO role. What's your role in the mix?
She's a CEO, that's right. And I am responsible for everything that's client facing. That's sales, that's marketing, that's customer care. So everything that goes external, that's on my table. She's the better organizer. She's the better leader. She's the better planner. And she has such a good vision. So she can focus on the things that she do well. I'm the better speaker. I'm the better salesperson. I've been in sales for a number of years. I can focus on things I do well.
Good pick. Good for you. Lots of notes taken on my side. Very insightful episode. Thank you so much, Carl, for that. This pod, it was sponsored by podpire.com. If you want to start or scale your pod, hit me up. Carl, where can people find out more about you?
You can find out more about me on my personal LinkedIn, or ReSocialize, which is what I recommend people look into at ReSocialize.